It's time to open the case files of the radio detective, Jerry Pearce, a veteran cop, an old school detective with stories to tell. Real crime in real time. The radio detective.
Welcome to tonight's show. I'm Jerry Pearce, the radio detective. Tonight's gun night here on the show. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to talk about guns all night, but we start out talking about your gun rights and your right to self-defense, your right to possess whatever gun you want to possess, actually, under the Second Amendment of this country, and we'll talk about all that tonight. On the board, the super producer, Jason Cunning, and answering your calls tonight's our own Kathy Isom again, and she's sitting there waiting for your call, and you can be part of the show. And did you have something, Jason?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Why don't you just come right into the middle of my monologue here and
I just thought
screw things up one more time on the old radio detective show.
I didn't do that.
What's up?
I've got some breaking news off of
you and
AP.
your breaking news. I'm going to break news, all right.
No, it's good gun stuff.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Congressional Republicans are trying to reshape the gun control debate. The GOP has begun pushing a plan to provide $100 million in grants to states that enact tougher penalties for illegal gun possession. The bill is sponsored by Florida's Bill McCollum, and it's patterned on a Virginia law that supporters say has reduced gun violence. That law imposes a 5-year minimum prison sentence without parole for possession of a gun during a violent or serious drug trafficking crime. McCollum's bill would provide grants to states that enact similar measures. Democrats say the bill is an attempt to distract public attention from GOP opposition to tougher gun control measures.
There you go. That's the word right from your breaking news.
That's good stuff.
It is good. I like that.
The Republicans, I think, have the right angle on this deal.
Just lock them up.
Lock them up.
Get them out of here.
They commit a crime with a gun.
They're down.
I'm a law-abiding guy.
Yeah, I doubt
I didn't
that.
do any. I didn't do anything with a gun, so I should be able to have a gun.
That's right. Let's go get one right now.
Let's do it.
Let's go out to. No, Boots don't carry them. Let's go to John McCormick's. Then we'll go out to the range and just shoot all that ammunition up.
Sounds good.
Let's get back to the show, Jason. Thanks a lot for your breaking news, and that's Jason's attempt at being Walter Cronkite right here. Folks, that's the way it was. Anyway, all this stuff flying around about gun control, crime control, and 1,000 other controls out there is enough to drive you mad. You know, the very word control, underline that, the very word control should be enough to send a warning signal to you. And you know the term control really means having power and authority over someone or something. In this case, that someone is you, and that something is your life. And one of the most successful ways of getting you to accept controls is to first scare the hell out of you. And once you're sufficiently filled with fear, someone always comes along with a plan to ease those feelings of anxiety and dread that they first put in there. And he or she, underline she, assumes the personification of your rescuer. They will say, follow my plan and I will set you free from your worry, your fear, and your torment. One of the greatest motivators of human beings is fear. Political operatives are experts at knowing which buttons to push to make you fearful. They'll grab onto an issue and in the most artful and designing way turn that issue into a mechanism to control you. Now, in order for that to work, they got to find a way to address you as a group. It's almost next to impossible for them to speak to you as an individual personage. And that, for instance, is why one of the most used terms by this present administration is the word children. They know how important young people are to moms and dads. They know they can say things that amount to convincing you that your children are in danger. And once they do that, that brings out that deep-seated protective instinct in all parents, especially mothers. And once they've scared you regarding what you love and care about most other than yourself, they literally own you. So now they've got you grouped, as I talked about above here. They got you into this group they want you into. You're no longer an individual now. You're parents. And parents have common thoughts and common fears. They all have a common interest. And that, my friends, is your children. Now enters the issue of guns. The same political operatives grabbed the gun issue And they go about scaring the hell out of you using examples of school shootings and so on. They always put the blame on the gun. They do not address the responsibility of the psychopathic individual who killed. They don't dare blame the parents for the lunatic because the parents are trying to persuade everybody to go along with their agenda on their behalf. They don't blame the lunatic since they'll say he or she wouldn't have done such a horrible thing if the gun hadn't been there. They will also say the lunatic, in a sense, is also a victim of the same gun. So in order to get the fear message out, what they do is they start lying to you. They'll say things like guns cause 38,000 deaths in America each year, and 8,000 of these are children. There's that word children I told you about. Well, the fact on that issue is that the statistics, child gun deaths, are exaggerated by including young adult criminals, often up to 18 and sometimes up to 24 years of age. So these so-called child gun death statistics include young adult drug dealers who are killing each other in turf battles. They don't mention that to you, though. And these deaths are not nearly as tragic as a truly innocent young child being killed, which is what most people think of when you say child gun deaths. Any other use of that phrase is, to say the least, misleading. And the truth further is, the number of American kids aged 0 to 15 killed with guns is about 950, not 8,000. Guns are involved in less than half of 1% of all child deaths. The chances of an American child aged 0 to 15 being killed with a gun are only about 1 in 50,000. That risk factor of 1/50th of 1%. For white kids, the risk factor is only 1 in 100,000. Now that's not an epidemic in anybody's terms. One such death occurs every 9 hours, mostly on the inner city situation. Not every 90 minutes, as you've heard these people say. And also, the gun death stats quoted by these anti-self-defense lobby groups include all deaths from guns. They don't tell you that, though. So they're including gun deaths that are actually justified, such as when a citizen or a police officer shoots a criminal who's trying to rape or rob or murder somebody. And finally, the anti-gun stats always fail to mention the many times that guns are used to prevent crime and save lives. Now I'm going to go through some more of these misleading statements tonight for you. I'm going to get into this a little bit further tonight than I have in the past on this show because I'm sick and tired of sitting here, and I'm not a gun nut. I don't sit around smelling gun oil and rubbing the stock on a rifle and having wonderful thoughts about what that means. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I'm a former law enforcement officer. I still work in my business with law enforcement throughout the country and abroad. And I know what they're going through. I know what crime's all about. Maybe not as much as some of the newer guys that are more experienced in dealing with the gang issues, although I'm pretty much up on gangs. But I do know what's right, and I do know what's wrong. And what we're being told in this country by the so-called leaders of this country and the so-called leaders in this state of California is wrong. And so I feel it's my job, and my voice is going to be used to communicate to you what the facts are. That's what investigators do. They give facts to people. And that's my role here this evening. And you can be part of that tonight. We're going to open this up a little later on. Write these numbers down. I've been chewed out by my friend Leonard up in the Bay Area.
The only place on the radio law enforcement can call home, the Radio Detective.
I'm Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective, back with you after the break. We're talking about guns tonight. We're talking about some lies being told to you by everybody in charge of this country and the state. And their object is to, for some reason, and maybe later in the program you have the answers. I have some questions for you later. Going to be a test. Maybe you can tell me what they're up to. Everybody has theories about this gun control business. I've already satisfied myself that it's not about the children, as I mentioned a moment ago. It's not about saving lives. There's something else going on here, and we'll talk about that later in the show. And I want to get back to some of the lies they're telling you. Before we do that, though, let's go to Jim in Fresno on a cell phone. Thanks for calling, Jim. Welcome to the program.
Hello there.
How are you?
Not bad at all. It's doing my heart good to hear that somebody else is thinking the same lines I am, that people are talking about the gun is doing everything instead of the person that is doing it. Right. And holding yourself responsible.
Right, absolutely, Jim. Absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm so sick of having guns blamed for what goes on in this society, and I cannot get it out of my system. I can't say enough about that this is ridiculous. And to have adults out here actually sit here and be persuaded by that kind of an argument is absolutely amazing to me.
It's disheartening when you do listen to this, and I firmly believe the agenda is to take away your guns by all of the legislation and everything else, and the first step is registration of all types of weapons, and that'll when that happens, look out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to get into that later in the program about that path we started down here. And, Massachusetts just passed some new legislation. One of our listeners, Rick, brought it to my attention. We'll talk about that later in the program too, Jim. But California is going to set the pace, actually, with the things that are going on here. And some of these attorneys generals around the country in these states have taken, as they did there, taken it upon themselves to pass some of these things and create these laws without going through the legislature, which takes it out of the people's choices, you see. And I don't know who appointed those guys God, but somewhere along the line we've got to say, wait a minute, this is not the way it's going to happen. But we've got to get people aware that they're being misled. And we've got to get these moms. They got this Million Mom March coming up. I'll talk about that later in the show, too, which turns out they have 100,000 so far lined up. But they're going to have this Million Mom March throughout the country. And they've scared these mothers in this country with the word children over and over again to the point that it's beyond belief that this guy, Clinton, reminds me of a Jim Jones personality out of Guyana when he had all those poor people down there. So I don't know, Jim, what the hold he has on the moms in this country. But moms don't have to worry about their children being killed. Frankly, they just don't have to do it. It's so minuscule, the chance of it. And I'm going to go into more of the actual facts here. But it's hard to get moms. Once you scare them about their children, they sit there and that's their goal, man, is to protect that child, as it is a dad's goal. But especially,
well, that's the understandable thing as far as moms go. But even moms are going to have to start realizing that without some sort of protection, they're going to be the ones that's going to be vulnerable, and it's just a misleading concept, and what have you.
I know. Well, Jim, I appreciate the call, my friend. Thank
you very much, and I'm probably going to lose you here in a little bit anyway, so I appreciate you talking with me.
Well, Jim, I appreciate the call, my friend. You drive safely out there. Jason, do you have something else?
Oh, man, I'm talking hot off the presses.
This makes me really mad, Jason.
This is breaking news, if there is any breaking. The people out there, you're going to hear it first here.
All right, we're ready.
President Clinton concedes Congress won't pass gun safety legislation by this month's anniversary of the Colorado school shooting. Clinton tells CBS there may be enough votes in Congress to pass gun control measures, but passage is being blocked by Republican leaders. He had hoped new measures would be approved by the April 20th anniversary of the shooting at Columbine High that left 14 students and a teacher dead. Noting tighter controls favored by state lawmakers, Clinton calls the congressional failure unconscionable.
Calling that lunatic president still upsets me. Will you stop it? I don't care what they said on the news wire. That's great. That's great news, Jason.
Breaking news.
You did a great job on that. I mean,
Thank you.
That's the next Cronkite, folks, right there. Let's look at here. We got people calling in to talk about your news breaking. Let's talk to Russell in Lemoore, California. Russell, welcome to the show. Hey, Russ.
Hey, hello.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on, and I just love your show.
Hey, thanks.
It's one of the best shows I've ever listened to.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now, what I want to say is it's really about what is wrong with the Democrats.
Perfect. I'm dying to hear this. I'm with you, Russ, but go right ahead, sir.
Well, here's my take. The Democrats are the only party that do not support women and poor people when it comes to taking away guns from law-abiding American citizens. And let me explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
A gun is the only thing that can make a man and a woman equal in terms of protection.
Right.
A man can overpower a woman, but a gun makes a woman safe. And subsequently, poor people in this country can only protect themselves with a use of a firearm from crime. So it turns out that the Democrats are the only party that is anti-woman and anti-poor people, and the Republicans are the only party that support women's equality and the safety of the poor. That's my take on this.
Russell, I want to tell you what, you've got that nailed, friend. I agree 100%. And you know what else I'm going to make mention? It's not on guns, but Clinton's attitude toward women is well displayed, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. I can't believe what is going on in this country. It turns out that Clinton is a big-time womanizer, and then again, he doesn't even respect young people, because look what he took with Monica Lewinsky. She was a very young lady, not quite a child, but not a full-blown adult.
Right.
So I'm just saying that when the Democrats try to say that they are the party that is supportive of women's equality, children, and the poor, that is a complete fallacy, and I want everybody to know that.
Well, you got it out there, Russ, and we listened to us up and down the state of California tonight, so I appreciate that very much.
And also, one last thing before I go, and I'll let you go, is I work at one of these state prisons out here. I'm not a correctional officer, but I am employed by the Department of Corrections, and I work face-to-face with these thugs in these prisons. And I just want you to know that tougher laws and actually enforcing the laws against criminals are what's made our streets safer, and not taking away our right to protect ourselves. And women and poor people should really get behind the Republicans on stopping what these Democrats are doing. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Russell, thank you, my friend, and good luck down there, and I appreciate that telephone call. Now, there's a guy that's been inside the joint. He's not a correctional peace officer. He's obviously a civilian employee of the state, but he nailed it right there. I mean, here's a guy that's got his feet on the ground, and he's nailed it. In fact, I'm going home. That's it. No more to say tonight. Russell just said it all right there in that. Before we go back to the, thank you, Russell. Before we go back to the calls, let me tell you about one more lie, and we'll get right to the call board. I promise everybody. The other lie is that they say guns are used only for killing. Guns are only used for killing. That's what they say. Now, let me tell you, compared to about 35,000 gun deaths every year, 2.5 million good, solid Americans use guns to protect themselves, their families, and their livelihoods. And there are 65 lives protected by guns for every life lost to a gun. 5 lives are protected per minute in this country. And of those 2.5 million protective uses of guns, about 1/2 million are believed to have saved lives. Now think about those statistics. That's not what they're telling you. They don't mention this stuff when they come out with that verbiage about guns. That's just one more lie I wanted to slip in. And let's go to a cell phone caller, Bill in Three Rivers, California. Bill, welcome to the show, sir.
How you doing, Jay?
Doing great. How about you?
Well, this is Liberal Bill again. I call you in once in a while,
Yes,
see how
sir.
you're doing.
Perfect. I'm glad you do.
I want you to know I'm probably your only liberal customer.
That's right. No, we appreciate you, Bill, more
Well,
than you know.
you need me, Jerry. You need people like me once in a while just to torment you.
That's right, sir.
That's correct. And even though I got to tell you though, you have done wonders for my physical conditioning.
Okay.
You got my heart rate up almost every night I listen to you, and so I do appreciate that. And I don't have to do the exercise bike anymore.
Well, you got rid of the Prozac too, didn't you?
I got rid of the Prozac. I'm much happier now that my blood pressure is higher.
Oh.
Hey, what I wanted to ask you real quick, in all seriousness now.
Okay.
Of the laws that have been passed, and because I'm assuming your position has been this way for let's say many years.
Yeah.
Which laws would you go back and repeal?
I wouldn't repeal any of the laws. Let me just say to you, if you're talking about the new laws,
I'm talking about any of the gun laws right up until 7:30 tonight.
Well, I can't. I'm not that much of an expert on all the laws across the country, except the ones that have the ones that have been in place for years already. Let's say before all the gun movement started, say in this year, okay, or say the last part of '99.
All right.
I think there's 22,000 of them. I've confirmed that.
Okay.
All they have to do with those, Bill, is enforce them. And when the NRA people get on to Clinton and the Department of Justice at the federal level for not going in and enforcing those gun laws, then I side with them on that. I really do. Because we've got so many gun laws already there, Bill, that address all of these issues. They're there already. There's too many, in matter of fact, for you and I to even know what they are. And they have not been out actively enforcing it. If they want more cops to do it, fine, but they're going to have to, at the federal level, enforce the law. And they honest to God, haven't been doing it. Now they're going to add more laws, and the kinds of laws they're adding now really don't affect criminals. They affect you and I.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. And I'm not against law. My God, that's been my life. But I think there are too many laws throughout the whole country, don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of gun laws right now that address every circumstance you and I could think of. If we were together over a whole tub of beer all night long, we couldn't address all the ones that are already covered under the law.
Well, there are a great many laws, and some of them are almost in contradiction of each other.
Absolutely, I agree.
We passed a law here, and you're much better at this than I am, about semi-automatic weapons or automatic weapons or whatever this was.
Right.
What was your feelings? Were you in favor or against that?
Well, no, I think, Bill, what you're talking about, the automatic weapon ban happened back in the 30s.
Well, it's the one recently. What was the one recently in California?
The SKS?
Yeah, that thing.
That's a goofy law. That whole thing was goofy. Those things aren't even, they're not the choice of criminals. That whole business, and in fact, the Attorney General of the state, when he was nailed on it, couldn't even explain what he was doing with that thing.
Okay.
And if they want it, let me tell you, you and I got to get something straight, and I think you agree with this. If we agree that if the gun is an inanimate object, and what they need is more laws that lock up the people that use them improperly or criminally, then you and I are on the same page. But it'd be like the car you're driving right now, Bill. We know that car, maybe not your car, but we know cars kill a lot of people every year, right?
Kill a lot.
But we do not go after the cars and the car manufacturers. We go after the drunk drivers and the people that are driving these cars wrong. And what's the difference in the gun deal? Tell me the difference. I
can give you an example of what I think is the difference, and maybe you can agree with me, maybe not. But if you and I are in a room and I have a baseball bat, a knife, and a gun, and you're 12 feet away from me, you tell me which one you want to run from.
Well, I understand.
Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to knock you dead or flat with that gun. And I'll reverse the object. You come at me with a baseball bat, you're still going to be an asshole.
Yeah, I understand.
You come at me with a knife, I'm still going to hurt you.
Bill, we lost you. Bill, we lost you out there. You faded out on us, and he must be up in the mountains there near Three Rivers. Bill, I'm sorry about that. If you want to come back on, I'll have Kathy let you in again to finish up. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Gene and Brian and the rest of them. We're talking about guns tonight, and Bill, the liberal there, has some points, and we were discussing it with him. If you have some points along that same line, we're not afraid to talk about it on this show. In fact, we're not afraid of anything on this show.
You're on the case with Jerry Pearce. Real crime in real time.
Inside the walls of prison, my body may be, but the Lord has set my soul free.
The Radio Detective.
Welcome back to the show. This hour of the show is brought to you by the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. They walk the toughest beat in the state. Now that I think about it, so do all the other folks that work in those institutions who are not peace officers. And thank God for each and every one of those CCPOA members and everybody else in the prison system for doing what they do to keep us safe from the predators in this society. And trust me, Jason and I and my son know from our tour of Corcoran that Rod Nason and George Galazza, the warden down there, set up what the facts are. We saw it with our own eyes. We're going to continue talking about guns tonight and your safety and what's being told to you in the way of lies. I'm going to try to bring you the facts and the truth on this show, and some opinion, obviously, and other breaking news as it comes up, thanks to our junior Cronkite fellow sitting over here, Jason, the super producer. Let's go to Brian in Madera, California. Brian, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, Jerry. It's nice to speak to you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the first time I'm calling, and I enjoy your show. I'm an NRA member. I have a CCW.
Perfect.
Served in the military. And my first question is, how come we're not calling this NRA night anymore?
Well, it actually is NRA night. I mean, we're talking about gun control. We're in the process of shifting over to a new format, and we didn't want to bring it. In fact, we wanted to make it a surprise. So we're in the middle of doing something here, Brian.
Okay, well,
quit probing in here. You're going to mess up our deal.
I'll move on to the next question then.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm a gun owner, obviously, and I can kind of understand why people would support gun control, especially if they don't own a gun. You turn on the TV, and it's hard not to support it, right? I mean, from the way that it's reported.
Right.
And I like to bring up a couple of things that you don't hear about. For example, Dan Rather, he actually used a shotgun to defend himself when somebody broke into his home.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something you don't hear about.
That's right.
On the news. And another thing is the Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, his brother actually used a handgun and killed somebody who was attacking him. But that's something you don't ever hear on the news. You only hear about the bad things.
That's right.
And I think that gives people a lopsided view. And if you're not informed, why wouldn't you support gun control, right? I mean, from the way it's presented to you.
Absolutely. Brian, you've nailed it. I mean, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And bringing up those two things, I bless you for that, because those kinds of things rarely come out on the program. And from a caller, we try to bring them out. Those are things I've overlooked that you nailed right away, and they never come out on the mainstream media, as you point out.
Yeah, I think that's really disappointing. Another thing I've noticed a lot is when the reporters will talk about a new law that's been proposed, a lot of times they'll follow that up with like a liquor store robbery,
right.
some 3,000 miles away,
right.
So that when people are watching, they'll subconsciously they'll think, oh wow, that's terrible. Maybe that law is a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that's really unethical. I mean, journalists are supposed to have a professional code, just like doctors or lawyers. And regardless of their personal beliefs, they're supposed to follow that professional code, because when reporting is mixed together with advocacy, you get propaganda.
Well, what you have in some areas, you do have. I know some reporters, both in television, radio, and in the printed media, personally, that I brought a few of them on the show, as a matter of fact, that are liberals. I mean, he and I, one that comes to mind, we go over and over again on things, but they do report the facts, and they do give both sides of the equation in their reporting. You don't find that as much in some of the areas around Washington, D.C., New York, and some of these places, which goes out over the television or in the major papers. There are a few, but very rarely anymore, Brian, so I think you've nailed that too.
Yeah, right. There was, I think it was last month, they were talking about the big drop in crime, and I was watching Fox, and they credited part of that to the enforcement of gun laws by the Clinton administration.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
And, every criminologist in the country has been basically saying it's the economy, it's the enforcement of, it's new police procedures, but really no professional criminologist has ever credited gun laws for the drop in crime. It's mostly the good economy. So I called the station, and I tried to point it out and be polite about it, and you could tell they were just really irked.
Right.
How dare you point out the fact that we were engaged in our advocacy, basically.
Right. No, that's right. And I'm going to move along, Brian, but I'm going to tell you this. You're absolutely right on, number one. Number two, here's the bottom line on the drop in crime. First of all, it hasn't dropped to where we need it to drop to. There was 350, 400% rise in it to begin with, so a few percentage points in a drop in the crime rate is still way, way above where it should be, okay? Number three is that locking these people up for longer periods has affected the crime rate. The reason for that is 85% of them are recidivists. And our cops out here are having to work on the same guys over and over and over again. But now we're beginning to get a hold on it with programs like 3 Strikes, it's called here. There's other programs of a similar nature throughout the nation that have been put into effect. That, my friend, is what I think we owe the credit for their drop in the crimes to. Brian, thanks for the call.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jerry.
Appreciate it, Brian. Brian checking in from Madera. Let's go to Ken in Fresno, California on a cell phone. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, how are you?
How you doing?
Oh, not bad. You know, I was up in the Bay Area today, and matter of fact, I was on the Oakland Bay Bridge, and they had a shooting, officer-involved shooting today.
Really?
Had a gentleman, I guess, riding a bicycle across the Oakland Bay Bridge, and he was pulled over by the highway patrol, and one thing led to another, I guess, and I guess the gentleman pulled a weapon out of his waistband, and I guess he fired at the officers, and they took him out.
Well,
and so I just, you know, that it's just amazing to me that the way the response from the people in the Bay Area is that, first of all, the news media is calling the person that was shot a victim, and by no means is he a victim. He's a perpetrator or criminal, and they're outraged that the police shot him. You know, just you can hear it in the voice of the callers in their radio stations. I think it's outrageous that any time a law enforcement officer has a weapon pulled on him, that the outrage is to the victim, the one that's shot, or not the victim, but the perpetrator. I don't understand that.
Well, I don't either, Ken. And now this happened today in the Bay Area?
Yeah, it happened about just before noon today.
Okay, well, I wasn't up on that, and Jason's nodding his head that he's up to it, but well, I mean, that's absolutely right. What happens here, and not only is it the news coverage people up in that Bay Area, but the Clinton administration in the New York shooting situation back there, not Diallo, but even the other ones recently they've had to get into, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have clearly laid the responsibility for all the problem at the doorstep of law enforcement, not the criminal. And that's just exactly another example of what you're pointing out right now. I'm glad they blew the guy away.
Well, I guess I am too. I hate that officer had to take those measures. That's what I hate. You know, I'm just a truck driver, you know, and I go up to the Bay and all over California every day, and I have dealings with the highway patrol officers, and I've never met one that was discourteous, and you know, and that's even when they write me a ticket. I'll be honest with you, you know, and they're doing their job, I'm doing mine, and I can't understand. I'll never understand how anybody would want to harm a law enforcement officer. They are, you know, like I say, they are the line. If there's no law enforcement, it's anarchy.
Absolutely.
And then where are we at?
Well, let me tell you one other thing before you split, Ken, and that is that law enforcement officer doesn't feel good about what he had to do today either. I've been there and done that. And that'll keep him awake many nights on what he had to do today. That's not something they run around looking to do, trust me. They would rather not have to shoot at anybody, much less shoot somebody. So it's not something these guys run around, you know, with a pistol in their hand, who can I shoot next routine, because they enjoy it. They hate that. Their families hate it. It's going to upset them for untold amount of time period over having to shoot that guy. So,
you know, back to Vietnam. You know, when I was in Vietnam, I know exactly what that feels like, and maybe not to the same degree as a law enforcement officer. He'll wear that the rest of his life.
Yep, you got that right. Well, Ken, you drive safely in that rig out there, will you?
Yeah, you do the same. And hey, I just found you on this station last night, and I'm glad I found you. I live in Fresno, and I'm on my way home, and I'll be looking for you every evening.
Well, we're here every evening until they throw me out. Hey, thanks, Ken, for the call, and you drive safely in that big rig. Let's go to Gene in Sacramento, California. Gene, welcome aboard.
Hi, sweetheart.
How are you?
Hey, I wish you would talk to girlfriends like mine. They come in two types, and they both say I'm crazy to have a gun for self-protection. One type, they both have the same excuse. The guy will take the gun away from me and use it on me. One of them would have no gun at all. The other type would have a air-powered or gas-powered BB gun, and they tell me they're repeaters, but they say either way it would be stupid for me to have a gun, and I'm saying that it would be stupid for me not to, because if you reach for it, my round would go through your hand and into your heart, or I could just stand there and hold it with my finger on the trigger, and you pull it away, and it'll still get you in the heart.
Right.
So would you talk to women like that?
Yeah, I mean, Gene, look at, have the gun in the home, put a sign outside the home that's lit up at night. The owner of this residence is well armed, and you won't have any burglars come around your house.
But
Trust me on that.
They think they're going to come anyway, and if I have a gun, they're going to shoot me with it.
No, there's not going to be.
How are they going to do that?
Look, I'm telling you, if burglars do not like to go into homes with people that have guns to start with. If you get up and say, I've got a gun, and they hear something rack back, I guarantee you the burglar is going to be gone. And if he does try the attack, then you just smoke him up, like you said, Gene.
But you have to tell women
I know.
they are not going to take it away from you.
Well, let them
on you. That's what they think. That's why women don't have guns, Jerry.
Well, I understand that. We're trying to address some of that tonight. Let me give you a little pointer, okay? I'd lean towards a 12-gauge shotgun with double-aught buck.
Well, that would ruin my antique.
Well, it would ruin your floor, your antiques, and your walls, but it would save your life. But run the gun right into his gut and squeeze the trigger.
I'm not afraid of doing that. I'm talking about my girlfriends who,
all right.
Ew, I don't want one, or I want a BB gun.
Yeah, well, a BB gun, they wouldn't even feel it.
I know.
I can tell you, we were in Corcoran Prison. There's guys down there who could open their mouth. You could shoot them in the mouth all day with BB guns, and they'd swallow it and then come over and kill you. So, I mean, just trust me on that.
I'm not asking you to convince me. I'm asking you to convince other women.
All right, I'll convince them.
All right.
All right, love.
Bye.
You take it easy. Jean's going to smoke somebody up, isn't she, Jason? I know she is. Let's go to Leonard in Concord, California. Do I know this guy?
Yeah, I think so. How you doing, Jerry?
How you doing, my friend?
It's good to hear you.
Well, it's good to have you on the phone here talking to us from Concord. What are you up to?
Well, I'm just sitting here listening to your program as usual.
All right. We love to have you, Leonard.
Yeah.
Leonard and I go back 40-some years together. He and I roamed the streets as teenagers, and he's an old friend. And we occasionally talk to each other, but I guess you'd call us brothers, huh?
Yes, sir.
Now,
that's the only way I have a visiting with you.
You and I have a lot of Cherokee Indian in us, right?
You betcha.
Where's our casino? We got to at least have a couple machines or something.
There's a nearby Indian casino nearby here.
Yeah, I know. We ought to get one, Leonard. We're getting cheated here somehow.
But I just want to call and tell you how much I appreciate, visiting with you over the radio and listening to your thoughts. And I think you're a very intelligent person.
Well, Leonard, I thank you for that, my friend. And I do the same for you. And people just don't know how much I love you and care about you. And we've been together since we were 12 years old.
Yeah.
We ran the streets when we didn't need guns, but we fought every day, didn't we? We were going to fight somebody out there every day. We don't talk about that in our past, do we?
Yeah, you don't want to talk too much about that on the radio.
Hey, Leonard, thanks for the call, my friend.
Hey, I love you very much.
I love you, too. Take it easy, my friend.
Bye.
That's Leonard checking in. Real quick, we're going to go to Marcus in Clovis, California. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Jerry, thank you for taking my call. I'll try to make it as quick as I can because I know you're at the top of the hour.
Well, we got some time. Go ahead.
At the beginning of the program, you touched up on a couple of real interesting points, and I think maybe you should follow up on them.
Sure.
We're talking. It's gun night and NRA night, quote unquote, so called. But anyway, we have to, I think, follow up on the statistics of the goods the gun have done, especially now that we have this big movement of women going up to Washington D.C.
Right.
I was in Pasadena. When the old lady stopped a burglar and stopped him right dead in his tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, East Los Angeles, when the riots, where ladies would come out of their residence and businesses to protect their belongings. We saw all that. I was with the National Guard at that time. I hadn't received my handicap. I hadn't lost my sight yet, but we don't talk about that, where women have come up here and defended their property, defended we were talking about children and defending the families.
Right.
These women were out there, and you were out in those riots out there. If you ever, and I'm pretty sure you had the feel, you saw some of this stuff, and none of this is brought up to the attention, especially brought up to the front burner and addressed to the public, brought it up and said, these are real issues. These things happen, and I think we have to maybe get on your program. I know there's women out there that have done these things. They defended their families, their children, their household, and everything. I think we should get a couple of these persons on board on the radio station and let them express the way what they felt, what they did, and why they did it. And I think that'll put a lot of good use to. We should get the word out and put the word out that the guns are beneficial, not just to hurt people there, but they're beneficial to the common old citizen. That guns do protect the old citizen.
Well, I'm going to do what you say, Marcus. I looked at Jason just now. He's nodding his head. We're going to get some gals lined up.
There you go.
I did cover about 4 stories about 2 weeks ago about actual cases where gals have saved their lives with guns. So
exactly.
I'll get a hold of those gals. We'll bring them on the show. That be all right?
Sure thing, Jerry.
Got to run, my friend.
Okay,
Thank you
Jerry.
for the call, and I appreciate that. That's a good idea, Jace. We'll follow. I'm Jerry Pearce, the radio detective. We're talking about guns and your safety tonight. Talking about the truth instead of the myths that are put out by this administration. We'll be back right after the top of the hour. Don't go away.
The Radio Detective, brought to you by the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. They walk the toughest beat in the state